Discover the incredible transformation after 24 hours of rejection. A touching Christmas revelation. Sarah poured the last cup of coffee for a couple of regulars who hardly looked up from their conversation. The clink of mugs and the hum of the diner felt like a suffocating blanket, each movement heavy with an oppressive weight. With bills stacked high and dreams of a better life suffocated by relentless rejection letters, she could barely breathe. Each no echoed in her mind, a piercing reminder that her aspirations of clawing her way out of waitressing and into a more meaningful future felt frayed, tethered only to the precarious thread of hope for her daughter, Lily. The Christmas lights adorned around Maplewood flickered cheerfully, a stark contrast to the growing darkness in her life. Every morning began with optimism, yet culminated into despair, the cycle sending her mind spiraling. What did she or her daughter really deserve in this crowded town? A full-time shift at the diner was barely enough to cover rent, let alone the looming threat of eviction. Those weighty thoughts drummed a relentless beat of inadequacy in Sarah's heart. Could teaching be her lifeline? Or was it just another foolish dream? And then there was Mr. Thompson, a retired professor who lingered at the diner for breakfast. He had an uncanny ability to see through the fog. He'd compliment her, commenting on her knack for explaining things, a hidden talent she had never acknowledged. "You should teach, Sarah. You've got a gift," he said, and his words sparked something deep within her. But what did she truly have to offer? Motherhood consumed her, leaving fragments of a woman buried under the weight of her duties and struggles. Her hands trembled as she scribbled her fears in a worn notebook, lifelines she'd dreamed of grasping but never quite dared to reach. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Facing a wave of self-doubt, Sarah decided to create an online platform to help struggling students. The joy it brought was intoxicating, igniting a passion she thought was lost. But that victory was short-lived. Established teachers in Maplewood rallied against her. Each disapproving glance at town meetings twisted the knife of anxiety deeper into her chest. "You're just a waitress," they would whisper, undermining her hard-won courage. Was Mr. Thompson's faith misplaced? The fractures in her confidence widened as she prepared for the school board meeting, a confrontation that carried her hopes and fears on its fragile back. The room would be tense, scrutiny slicing through her words. On Christmas Eve, as she braced for the impending clash with the board, she felt the weight of countless rejections pushing against her ribs. All her labor, her budding dreams, were under siege. The warmth of the festive season seemed alien, hollow without the promise of a future. She walked home with her heart racing, the looming shadows of doubt refusing to lift. Hope, was it even a viable option anymore? Yet, thoughts of Lily reclaimed some of her resolve, each inhale pushing her ever closer to the brink of determination. Would the spirit of Christmas allow for rebirth amid rejection? She needed a miracle, a glimmer of light to guide the way. As she stepped across her threshold, the glow illuminating the room revealed her daughter's small Christmas tree. A simple act of love that made Sarah pause. But doubt clung to her fiercely, leaving her wondering if this warmth could surge through her insecurities, or if she was destined to lose it all. The fluorescent lights in the diner buzzed, but they seemed distant, almost ghostly, as Sarah prepared for the school board meeting. She could hardly focus on pouring coffee or delivering smiles. Thoughts clamored in her mind, each one a reminder of her insignificance. "You're just a waitress," echoed again and again like a mantra woven into the fabric of her self-doubt. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her reflection revealing a pale woman with weary eyes. "Who are you really?" she whispered, but the silence that followed offered no answers. However, the anticipation for the board meeting loomed large. Her heart beat a relentless tattoo in her chest. It was time to confront not just the board but her deepest fears as well. Every syllable she rehearsed in her mind fought against the gnawing anxiety. The statistics she prepared fluttered away in the face of self-doubt. Who would listen to someone like her? Yet, she recalled Lily's proud little face as she shared her excitement about the online platform, eagerly discussing her mother's desire to teach. Would she let failure diminish that bright spark of joy? Arriving at the meeting, the familiar scent of stale coffee settled into her bones. Greeted by cold stares from the board members heightened her awareness of the barrier they erected. She was an interloper, someone treading in foreign waters. Yet their dismissiveness felt like a personal attack. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, channeling the undercurrent of hope that flickered inside her. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Morgan," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I stand here not just as a waitress, but as a mother who believes in the potential of every child." The room seemed to shift ever so slightly, yet she could still sense the trepidation swirling around her. The faint whispers continued, but she pressed on, shaping her words with the grit she had long buried. The challenge was not merely to introduce her platform, but to confront those who dismissed her mission. "I've seen countless students struggle, not just academically but emotionally. We all deserve opportunities to learn differently." Her gaze locked onto Mr. Thompson, who offered an encouraging nod from the corner of the room, a beacon amid the tumult of rejection. As she spoke, something within her began to solidify, a realization that while circumstances might have confined her for years, she had the power to define her path. With each sentence, it became clearer. This meeting was a battleground, not for approval, but for acceptance of who she was becoming. Her trembling bravado morphed into resolute passion, as she painted a vision of a space that embraced struggling learners, where their voices could echo without fear. Questions from board members broke through her resolve but strengthened her, igniting her determination. "Why should we trust you? You lack credentials." Each query felt like a wall pushing against her, but she countered, "What makes a good teacher? A degree or a passionate heart? My experiences inform my approach." With every volley thrown her way, she felt doubts corroding, replaced by a fierce sense of identity. Here was someone more than a waitress. She was a champion for those without a voice, and perhaps for herself. As the meeting continued, she could almost hear the audio of her own life shifting. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Perhaps some members remained skeptical, but a few leaned forward, intrigued. An opportunity formed amidst adversity. Walking away from the meeting that evening, the chill of the air was sharp yet invigorating. She felt lighter, as if the weight of perceptions had started to lift. She had shown up, a battle had been fought, but in this journey toward self-discovery, she now faced an equally daunting realization. The fight had only just begun. Doubt still lingered, but clarity settled around her like a comforting blanket. This was her mission, to nurture a future she believed in. And as she turned the key in the front door, the world outside glowed with newfound promise. The road ahead stretched out before her, full of risks and ambitions yet unexplored. Her next steps would not just dictate her future, they would shape Lily's as well. Would her daughter witness a mother broken by rejection, or a figure blazing forward despite it? The question loomed larger now. What sacrifices would she have to make to keep this flame of hope alive? The following morning, Sarah woke up to the sun filtering through her kitchen window, illuminating the dusty corners that echoed with the memories of her past. She breathed in the aroma of fresh coffee, a little miracle she mastered through countless early shifts at the diner. But today was different. Today, she was scrubbing away remnants of her old self. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, a notepad scattered with half-formed ideas. She pictured the board meeting, the skeptical faces, her trembling hands. But more importantly, she envisioned the moment that ignited something profound within her, a swell of determination that shook loose the shackles of her self-doubt. But what now? If she wanted to chase her dream, she had to push further into uncharted territory. The online teaching platform Lily had mentioned held promise, but the eyes of the school board still haunted her. They had planted seeds of doubt, but now necessity was ripe for growth. Could she harness that fear into something tangible, powerful? Without hesitation, she opened her laptop and began to research educational methodologies, studying ways to engage diverse learners. Hours slipped by unnoticed as terms like differentiated instruction and constructivist learning danced across the screen, each concept revealing hidden layers of potential within her. She wasn't just absorbing information. She was constructing the foundation of a new purpose. Between her research, she jotted down a plan for a community workshop, her vision becoming clearer. It would not be just for the children but also for their parents, a space for dialogue, connection, and strategy. Under her breath, she repeated, "I belong to this conversation." Enthusiasm flickered inside her, intermingled with uncertainty. What would she say to the parents? Would they trust her, knowing her only as a waitress? Facing her insecurities head-on felt daunting. But something told her that transformation beckoned through persistence. With the foundation in mind, she decided to enlist the help of her fellow waitstaff. This isn't just my fight, she thought. I need a team. She recruited her friend Mia, who had a knack for community outreach. As they brainstormed ideas, Sarah felt a kinship forming, an essential camaraderie that lent her the courage to explore broader horizons. Rejection still lurked at the corners of her mind, but this time she embraced the discomfort, recognizing it as part of the process. Days turned into evenings filled with preparation. While she waited tables, the chatter of customers flowed around her like the current of a river, fluid, unpredictable. Each interaction provided an opportunity for musing about her new approach. A frustrated parent, a struggling student, it became increasingly evident that these conversations were not just background noise. Each became a stepping stone toward something greater. The day of the first workshop dawned, and Sarah paced her living room, her heart racing. She wore a dress that she thought might empower her. Yet with every passing minute, doubt began to creep in. What if no one shows up? What if they laugh? But at that moment, as she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror, she saw a woman not defined by her past. She was no longer merely a waitress. She was a catalyst for change. When the doorbell rang, her pulse quickened. A small crowd had gathered outside. The collective energy buzzed with anticipation, piercing the veil of her anxiety. Here were the families she aimed to serve, curious about how she could possibly relate to their struggles. No longer could she equivocate her worth. As she opened the door, the hopeful faces gazed back, and she tasted the salt of her own final fears evaporating. This was a chance, a tangible opportunity to step into her truth. "Thank you for coming," she said, gathering her courage, each word becoming a taut rope of connection. But just as she began to speak about her vision, the unmistakable sound of an angry voice interrupted from the back of the room. "What do you know about teaching? Who do you think you are?" A chill settled into the air as all eyes turned toward the newcomer. The force of those words struck at Sarah's core, instantly threatening to unravel everything she had worked for. With her heart in her throat, Sarah realized she was not just fighting the naysayers on the board anymore. She was now facing the very real specter of doubt that had taken root within herself. What path would she take in the face of this new challenge? The next move was critical, and as tension seized the room, Sarah knew she had to respond no matter the cost. The weight of the interruption hung in the air like fog, thick and ominous. Sarah's heart raced as she searched for her voice amidst the swirling doubts. "Who do you think you are?" echoed relentlessly in her mind, morphing into countless questions about her own worth. But now was not the time to shrink into the shadows of criticism. Swallowing hard, Sarah met the piercing gaze of the accuser, a parent, perhaps, looking for recognition in their own struggle. The room was thick with expectation, every face poised between curiosity and skepticism. Recognizing the palpable tension, Sarah took a moment, centering her thoughts. She had spent countless nights preparing for this moment, sharpening her vision, and rehearsing her words. "You're right," she replied, her voice steady, surprising even herself. "Who am I? I'm just a woman passionate about education. And I've seen firsthand what our children are capable of when we support them as a community." There was a tremor in her voice, but she embraced it, allowing it to carry her conviction. She had no qualifications on paper, no advanced degrees or lengthy experience, but she had lived these challenges, worked alongside parents over morning coffee while serving tables, listened to their stories, and shared in their burdens. It was enough. "I may not have it all figured out, but I know we can create an environment where everyone feels welcomed and valued. That's what I'm here to discuss." As her words hung in the air, a flicker of understanding shone in the eyes of those gathered. The skeptical parent's face softened, a subtle acknowledgement that mattered more than she could articulate. This isn't about me, Sarah continued. It's about us. Seized by newfound momentum, she launched into the framework she had so carefully crafted. The workshop would emphasize collaboration, the sharing of burdens, and the importance of community involvement in education. With each passing minute, she watched her worries dissolve into determination, their transformation palpable in the room. She engaged the audience, asking them to share their hopes for their children, for their community. One by one, voices emerged from the back of the room, weighed down by years of silence and skepticism. Their stories unfolded like delicate petals, revealing vulnerabilities but also fortifying a shared purpose. After some time, she caught Mia's eye, her friend's supportive smile illuminating the dimness of the previous doubt. It was a reminder that strength could emerge from interconnectedness, a bond of shared dreams. By the end of the initial discussion, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The parent who had shouted her doubts earlier stood up again, this time with a different tone. I never thought about it like that. You might actually be onto something. Sarah's heart swelled. She could see the seeds of potential sprouting in the acknowledgement of her truth. Yet, as the workshop tallied the points for the evening, a sense of unease nagged at her. The student she'd pictured as she crafted her lesson had yet to step into this new light. The girl on the cusp of stepping into her future. That part of Sarah's message had yet to be fully realized. As the informal discussion circled back around, Sarah faced the lingering question of the evening. What if they reject me again? What if the board remains unmoved? In that moment, she realized her mission was not just to convince others of her worth, but to keep believing in herself, despite the challenges looming beyond the workshop. She clenched her fists, vowing to reinforce the network she was beginning to build, risking exposure with each interaction moving forward. The closing of the workshop ushered in a palpable energy, yet doubt still lingered just outside the walls of her growing dream. As participants departed, Sarah stood in the doorway, her thoughts racing toward the next hurdle. The gathering storm clouds of the school board weighed heavily on her mind. The path ahead promised tension, and she felt that old familiar fear creeping back. It was time to face the board again, this time with her community alongside her. But as she turned back into the living room, the voices of those who believed in her echoed from the evening, filling her with a sense of clarity and purpose. You don't need to be perfect, she whispered to herself, the truth of the statement vibrating through her core. Yet as she prepared to confront her next challenge, one resounding question remained. Would the board be willing to listen, or would their skepticism drown out the voices she had just begun to embrace? The following morning was clouded with a sense of purpose that pulsed in Sarah's veins, sharp and invigorating. The workshop had ignited something within her, a flicker of resilience that she hoped would hold as she approached the school board meeting that afternoon. She could no longer afford to second-guess her instincts. As she prepared, she mentally reviewed her notes, not merely the framework of her proposed plan, but the myriad stories she had heard the night before. Each mother, father, and child had shared a piece of their struggles, and Sarah had transformed those fragments into a narrative that shimmered with hope. But could she weave that narrative into the hearts of the board members, or would they only see the labels that society had placed on them, their struggles, as mere statistics? The ticking clock felt like a countdown to a pivotal battle. She adjusted her blazer, catching a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The reflection was a mask of confidence, but the internal earthquake churned fear. Today's confrontation empowered her with voice, yet left her vulnerable. Stepping into the meeting room, her heart raced again, but now it was a heartbeat of anticipation, not trepidation. The board members sat at their long, imposing table, ready to examine her plan through their critical lens. Sarah squared her shoulders, and felt the weight of everyone's hopes and fears lift her stance. Thank you for waiting for our input, the board president began, his tone one of formality that hinted at skepticism. Let us hear your proposal. This was her moment. With steady hands, she unfolded her well-structured vision, speaking passionately about community involvement and parent engagement in schools. As she hit key points, the need for mentorship, after-school programs, and open forums for parents to express concerns, she could almost hear the faint whispers of her peers cheering her on. But then the unexpected happened. One board member, A figure known for brusque dismissal, interjected. You talk about community involvement. What metrics do you have that prove this will make any difference? His tone pierced the air. The tension crackled, and she felt the shadows of doubt creeping in again. Drawing in a breath, Sarah grounded her emotions. The metrics are in the narratives, she responded, remembering the tears and laughter shared by parents. Sometimes, success isn't visible in numbers. It's evident in how children feel about their school, their sense of belonging. I believe we can create that environment where every child, regardless of their background, feels valued. Those are the stories that build true community. Silence descended for a moment, and Sarah felt their collective scrutiny. She fought to maintain the clarity of her vision amidst the doubt that fogged her mind. She was not just defending her proposal. She was defending the dreams of every child like the girl she envisioned, standing at the precipice of her future. The critical board member arched an eyebrow, seemingly considering her words. Sarah leaned in, tapping into the shared purpose she had felt in the workshop. Imagine what we could achieve if we prioritize emotional investment, if we harness the power of relationships. A stir rippled through the room. She could see the flickers of interest in some members' eyes, the cracks forming in the armor of indifference. Yet, she also sensed the fearing whispers of the familiar. What if her mission faltered? What if, despite her best efforts, their skepticism drowned her vision? They engaged in deliberation, their voices swirling into a murmur of contemplation, but she focused on her breath, reminding herself she was not alone. Steeling herself for their decision, Sarah registered the shift around her. She was no longer just a hopeful voice about education, but a representative of transformative potential. Just as she was beginning to believe they might open their minds, another board member pointedly asked, "Are we really sure this idea is worth pursuing, given the resources we should allocate to more traditional initiatives?" Sharp and hot frustration threatened to rise, yet she suppressed it. The battle was not about changing one mind. It was about shifting perceptions. Was she ready to risk everything to pursue an outcome for children who needed allies? As the board leaned toward consensus, the final question loomed. Would her vision penetrate the core of their operations, or would it be dismissed as mere idealism? Sarah straightened her back. The weight of responsibility settled, even if it felt daunting. Sensing the room inhale, she knew that clarity came from confrontation. The moment for change was at hand, and with her heart beating fiercely, she was ready to make her stand. Are you prepared to invest in the future that these children deserve? She boldly asked, her voice resonating with fearless determination, binding her to her mission. The question hung in the charged atmosphere, teetering on the edge of opportunity or a precipice that could lead to failure. And as she awaited their response, she felt the trepidation transform into something purposeful. She was no longer just advocating for her plan, she was elevating the dreams of countless children. But would that be enough? The electric tension filled the room, leaving an undeniable doubt. Would they truly embrace her vision, or would she once again find herself standing in the shadows of rejection? The silence was deafening, stretching taut as Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, a relentless reminder of the pivotal moment she had conjured. A few board members exchanged looks. Were they contemplating the unorthodox path she had laid out or dismissing it outright? The president cleared his throat, and Sarah's breath hitched, anticipating the blow of their collective judgment. Your passion is commendable, Sarah, he began, but this initiative conflicts with our existing budget allocations. We need proof, not just a vision. His words sliced through her resolve like a cold wind. She felt the familiar chill of doubt begin to creep back, but she clenched her hands into fists, tuning out the noise of discouragement swirling around her. She internalized the lesson from the workshop, the significance of resilience in the face of skepticism. This wasn't the time to falter. With each word spoken from that table, her understanding of the struggle transformed. It was no longer about seeking approval, but standing firm in her truth. I understand the budget constraints, she replied, evident calmness in her voice amidst the onslaught of anxiety. But when do we invest in kids? We owe it to them, and I can show you that the community will back this. The board members looked to one another, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. She could see in their eyes flashes of realization. There was more than mere numbers at stake. Digging deeper into her resolve, Sarah found herself leaning forward with each point she articulated, providing examples of schools that had turned their trajectories around by focusing on relationships, emphasizing that success could bloom in unexpected places when nurtured properly. Think of it this way: what story do you want to tell 5 years from now? One of neglect, lost potential? Or one of flourishing students who, against the odds, became leaders? Who will you choose to champion? Each question hit harder than the last, driving the point home that this was not merely about policies, but about the very fabric of the future they shaped through their decisions today. With adrenaline pumping through her veins, she thought about the unyielding voices she had represented in that room: determined children, anxious parents, weary educators. Each of them had imbued her with something invaluable: a fierce commitment to the cause. She couldn't let complacency steal that passion. The board president steepled his fingers, momentarily lost in thought, but Sarah noticed the slight furrow in his brow, the wheels turning. Each hesitant look exchanged between members filled her with an intoxicating sense of hope, but she knew she was merely scratching the surface of a challenging fight. Let us not forget what we're after. Our job is to create environments where these kids thrive, Sarah persisted, her voice now steady as she faced the uncertainty. We owe them our best selves. I cannot stand by while we assume a system should only rely on traditional metrics. This is about nurturing relationships. Let us begin reconceptualizing our approach together. In a room where the air felt thick and charged with anticipation, she leveled her gaze at the board, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. Doubt was still an undercurrent. Yet a glimmer of transformative possibility flickered as one member asked, "But what if this fails? We risk our reputation, and what if it succeeds?" She interjected, capturing their wavering focus. Reputations are built on bold moves, not skittish hesitations. We can't be afraid to innovate for what matters. We owe it to these children to try. Her heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of her words, pushing her forward, charging the very essence of her proposal. After a brief deliberation, murmurs arose once again, but now with a tone of consideration rather than dismissal. The room was once more alive with potential, a shift she had only dared to dream about moments ago. Had she turned the tide, prompted them to see the children beyond their struggles and labeling? As their conversation intensified, Sarah allowed herself a moment to breathe, her heart resonating with a mixture of triumph and vulnerability. Yet the uncertainty of the final decision still loomed over her. Would they dare embrace her vision of hope, or pull back into the safety of convention once more? The chair finally turned to her, eyes searching, and said, "Thank you, Sarah. This is quite unconventional. We need more time to discuss, but perhaps we can explore the possibility of a pilot program?" Gratitude washed over her, intertwined with cautious optimism. They hadn't shut her down. But would this pilot program truly transform lives? Or would it be another bureaucratic attempt that amounted to nothing? As she left that meeting room, a mixture of fuzzy hopes and lingering fears wrestled within her. She had cracked the door open, but now the hard work was to pave a path through it without losing the thread of her vision. The clock was ticking again. Time felt achingly fleeting, and full of potential. As she prepared to debrief with her colleagues, a gnawing thought surfaced. What sacrifices would she need to make to protect her dream of change? And how deeply was she willing to fight? And there, in the crosshairs of resolve and uncertainty, Sarah understood the battlefield was no longer just about tactics. It was about the very fibers of her identity intertwined with a mission. She was no longer just an advocate. She was a warrior ready to claim the future of education. But would her resolve withstand the storms ahead? The sun dipped low on the horizon as Sarah walked out of the boardroom, a symphony of possibility blaring in her mind yet tangled up in doubts. The discussion of the pilot program had ignited something within her, a flicker of hope, but alongside it lay a daunting reality. She was venturing into uncharted territory, and there was no guarantee the board would follow through with the support she desperately needed. As she stepped outside, the crisp air cut through the lingering tension in her chest, urging her to think clearly. A part of her ached for validation, an assurance that the path ahead would lead to something transformative. But she had no time for lingering doubts now. The chance to impact the lives of students weighed heavier than any fear. She reached her office, the walls lined with posters of vibrant classrooms, smiling children, and inspirational quotes that had been her safe space, a reminder of why she chose this profession. She could not let those reminders become a distant memory buried under administrative challenges. The stakes had risen too high. She had to channel her energy into planning her next steps. Glancing at her calendar, she noted the upcoming deadlines for grant applications and reports. The clock didn't just measure time, it felt like a countdown. The pilot program could be her lifeline, but she needed compelling data to back her claim, to show the board that investing in relationships had yielded tangible results elsewhere. Driven by urgency, Sarah dove into research. Late into the night, she combed through case studies, finding examples of successful community engagement initiatives. Her pulse quickened as she scribbled notes, piecing together a vision that could persuade the board to see the validity of her proposal. This was more than just numbers. It was about transformation, connection, and fostering resilience. Each discovery fueled her resolve. She remembered the children she had met during her site visits, their laughter, their dreams. They were the very essence of her mission. Could she galvanize that raw tenacity to influence others? She would present her findings at the next board meeting, framing them not merely as statistics, but as poignant narratives. That night, a restless energy coursed through her. She scribbled ideas, strategizing on how to blend her research with storytelling. The familiar hint of doubt lingered in the corners of her mind. Was she romanticizing something too fragile? Yet just as quickly, she quelled that voice. This was her fight. The next morning, a bubbling excitement replaced the remnants of doubt. She scheduled a meeting with her colleagues, eager to share her findings and gather support. The walls of her office, once filled with uncertainty, became a beacon for collaboration. "Everyone, we need to push back against traditional norms," she stated, her voice steady with conviction that rang out. "This isn't just a proposal. It's about a revolutionary idea of how we engage with our students and the community." As she shared her research, her colleagues leaned forward, curiosity igniting their discussions. The energy in the room bounced off the walls, creating a current that propelled them all forward. She had sparked an idea, and with each question and idea shared, her vision morphed from an isolated concept to a collective mission. Yet an ever-looming question hung silently in the back of her mind. What would she do if they didn't embrace this change? If the fear of failure created a barrier against her enthusiasm? Facing that hypothetical sent shivers down her spine. Still, refusing to succumb to doubt, she resolved to build not only a team but an ironclad case for her pilot program. As the day wore on, the conversations within her office heightened, buzzing with anticipation and discomfort in equal measures. They were addressing the fears that accompanied risk, wrestling with their own professional identities, navigating new waters. But Sarah's thoughts turned inward. Each challenge felt more personal, as if she were unpeeling layers of her motivation. What if she was wrong? What if her approach backfired? The stakes were high, but it was the very possibility of success that forced her to confront those fears directly. The opportunity to stand at the intersection of education and innovation invigorated her. She hadn't just become an advocate. She was a catalyst for change. The realization lit a fire within her. She couldn't allow fear to fester and grow roots. But as that ember flickered with newfound determination, another voice whispered through the fray. Would she have the strength to carry her vision forward when faced with inevitable resistance? Sarah tightened her grip on her notes, the battle in her heart palpable. The journey to implementation began now, laden with uncertainty and the promise of revelation. Yet, diving into the unknown felt like the bravest step she could take. As she gathered her team to finalize the proposal, a rebellious thought emerged. What expansive potential awaited them if only they dared to challenge the doubts hovering around them? The question lingered like a beacon, a new uncertainty waiting to unfold. What heights would they reach? And what depths would they confront on this burgeoning journey towards transformation? Sarah awoke the following morning, tension coiling around her as she mentally prepared for the day ahead. She had spent the previous night immersed in her thoughts, crafting the narrative of her proposal. Yet the weight of uncertainty tugged at her. What if she miscalculated the board's reception? The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined, her vision threading through a labyrinth of doubt and ambition. The office buzzed with the hum of colleagues arriving, their early morning chatter contrasting sharply with the storm brewing in her mind. Outwardly she wore a mask of professionalism, but inside an ache for affirmation simmered. She could feel the potential rejection hovering in the atmosphere, a specter that threatened to undermine her fierce resolve. "Good morning, Sarah," a colleague called out, smiling brightly as he passed. His enthusiasm felt like a double-edged sword, an unwitting reminder of the buoyancy she was desperate to project. She forced a smile, reminding herself that confidence could be infectious. Yet as her gaze landed on her notes, nerves fluttered akin to birds trapped in a cage. Gathering her team felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She positioned herself at the center of the conference table, her heart pounding in sync with the ticking clock overhead. As each face turned expectantly to her, anticipation crackled in the air. This was her moment to dismantle fear with clarity, to weave her narrative into the fabric of the proposal that could change everything. "Today, we're not just discussing numbers. We're shaping futures," she began, her voice stronger than she felt. "This pilot program isn't merely a project. It's an opportunity to redefine how we engage with our students." The words flowed from her, a burgeoning confidence infusing her delivery. As she elaborated her ideas, her colleagues chimed in with insights and critiques, each interaction sharpening the vision she hoped to present. Yet, through the constructive conversation came whispers of skepticism. She sensed the apprehension lurking just beneath the surface, a resistance to stepping outside their comfort zones. "What if we fail?" came a quiet voice from the back of the room. The question hung heavily in the air, a reminder of the fragility of ambition. Sarah instinctively straightened, ready to address the fear head-on. Every initiative carries risks, and every innovative step taken is laden with uncertainty. But what if we succeed? Pushing against the doubt wasn't just about specifics. It was about fostering a belief that change could unfold from vulnerability. She decided right then to reveal her own insecurities, a gamble of honesty that could either alienate or unify. "I'm scared too. I worry we might battle resistance. Or perhaps I'm not the right person to lead this. But it's precisely that fear that shows how much we care about our students." The tension shifted, common ground found in shared vulnerability. Eyes softened as her colleagues began to share their own fears, building a sense of solidarity. Conversations that had started with skepticism now became a tapestry of support and determination. Yet even as they rallied behind her, a deep-seated uncertainty coiled in Sarah's gut. Could she truly inspire this level of commitment? As enthusiastic responses flowed in response to her plea, a nagging fear whispered once more. What if the board didn't share the passion ignited here today? She mentally steeled herself. It was no longer a question of whether she would confront that doubt. It was a matter of when. Leading was not simply about harnessing the team's energy, it was about facing potential judgment from those in power. She took a moment to breathe deeply, mentally preparing for the pivotal board meeting. Finally, as discussions simmered down, she found clarity among the noise. With each connection made, every story shared, her resolve fortified. "Let us channel this energy into our proposal," she said, her mind racing through the complexities ahead. "This has to be more than just a proposal. It needs to be a movement, one that honors every child and educator willing to take a risk." The room ignited with ideas, her colleagues sprouting visions that echoed her own. Yet each burst of creativity pulled her further from the teetering edge of her confidence, leading to a feeling of impending vulnerability. If they were to push forward, it would mean exposing her ambitions to scrutiny from those who held the keys to approval or rejection. She exited the meeting invigorated yet unsettled, a fire ignited against a backdrop of formidable uncertainty. Would they have the resoluteness to carry this momentum forward into the meeting with the board? As she prepared her materials, the upcoming confrontation loomed ahead, fraught with the possibility of rejection. Determined to keep moving forward, Sarah vowed to confront every obstacle head-on. But as she sat with her proposal before her, contemplation gripped her. How would she respond to inevitable doubt from their ultimate decision-makers? The wholesome energy from her team felt palpable, but she couldn't shake the unease that titillated her core, urging her to confront a truth she hadn't faced yet. What if their joint courage faltered, and the board ultimately dismissed everything they had worked for? As Sarah settled into her desk, the weight of the proposal loomed larger than ever. The clock ticked mercilessly, each sound echoing her escalating anxiety. Her colleagues had rallied, given her their all in support, but now it felt as if she stood alone on a precipice. Was she prepared to leap into the unknown? She meticulously arranged her notes. Yet each time her hands brushed the papers, flickers of self-doubt wormed their way into her mind. What if her voice faltered before the board? What if she stumbled over the complexities she had spent days perfecting? Thoughts ricocheted in her head, drowning out the strength she had drawn from her team moments ago. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to visualize success. This wasn't just a proposal. It was a chance to reshape an educational framework that meant so much to her. What if she could evoke a transformation not just in funding, but in perspective? The tension in her gut urged her to dwell on the what-ifs. Yet she wrestled with it, grappling for control. The sunlight streamed through her office window, casting long shadows across her workspace. As the warmth enveloped her, she felt a flicker of courage rise within. She could draw from every word shared in that earlier meeting. The discussions had forged a bond, an understanding that extended beyond a mere professional alignment. Her phone buzzed. It was Lisa, her teammate who had expressed doubts during their earlier meeting. Deep breaths. You're more prepared than you think. We all believe in this vision. The message soothed a frayed nerve in her brain. Perhaps belief didn't just hinge on the outcome. It also rested in the act of stepping forward, regardless of apprehension. As she began to outline the key points for her pitch, one thought echoed louder than the others. Leadership meant vulnerability, risking rejection for the possibility of growth. If she was to instill belief in the board, she must start with her own conviction first. It was crucial, she realized, to channel her fears into a story that resonated with the potential for change rather than a focus on possible rejection. The hour drew closer, and the cadence of her heartbeat matched the distant trepidation of the impending meeting. With her notes laid out before her, each bullet point sharp with intention, Sarah embraced the quiet. She considered her personal stakes, the motivation that carried her forward. She was not just advocating for numbers. She was fighting for her vision, and for every student's potential that could be unlocked with this program. Arriving at the boardroom, she could feel a transformation unfolding. The familiar faces stared back at her, a mixture of acceptance and skepticism that both intimidated and inspired her. As she stepped into the room, every ounce of vulnerability she had focused on turned into a foundation of strength. She approached her role not merely as a presenter, but as a storyteller ready to capture authentic narratives of possibility. We aren't here just to report statistics, she began, looking around the room, making direct eye contact. We're here to discuss lives impacted by our decisions. The words flowed, instinctively combining her statistics with personal anecdotes and the collective hopes voiced by her team. Yet even as she presented, a pang of anxiety remained beneath the surface. Would the board understand her? Would they see beyond the data and engage with her vision? In that moment, the reality struck: her leadership was about to be scrutinized. Yet that singular pressure became her fuel. Concluding her presentation, Sarah could sense a change. The board members exchanged glances, their expressions a tapestry of consideration and contemplation. At that moment, her heart raced not from fear, but with the anticipation of what could follow if they chose to embrace her proposal. But the most daunting question lay ahead. How would they respond to this initiative, her vision, when they weighed it against their own fears and expectations? As the board prepared to discuss, a hush fell over the room, and Sarah felt a palpable shift. This moment had the power to redefine their paths, both collectively and individually. Her journey was just beginning, and it was one fraught with uncertainty and the knowledge that even potential rejection could become a catalyst for something larger. As she stood poised to listen, a new realization dawned on her. What if, in facing the board's judgment, she discovered the true essence of her capabilities? The moment of truth approached, her heart pounding as she awaited their response. Would they see the value in her vision, or would they dismiss it, as she had long feared? The floor was theirs, and for the first time, she felt ready to embrace whatever came next. Succeed or fail, she would not yield to fear. After a silence that felt like an eternity, the board's president finally broke the tension. Thank you, Sarah, for your passionate presentation. You've given us a lot to think about. A collective sigh escaped her, relief mixed with the anticipation of what was to come next. As they engaged in discussion, Sarah felt her pulse quicken again, a mixture of hope and apprehension swirling within her. The board members weighed her arguments against their expectations, and Sarah locked onto their expressions, seeking validation. Would they embrace her framework rooted in connection? Or would they retreat to traditional measures that had long dictated their approach? Several members spoke, some expressing cautious support while others raised skepticism. The metrics are unclear, one member reiterated. What guarantees do we have that this will produce measurable results? She took a deep breath, feeling the old familiar weight of doubt creeping back. It had been a long journey to this moment, and now everything hinged on grappling with their concerns. I understand that metrics are essential, she replied, her voice infused with steadiness cultivated from countless nights of introspection. But measures of success should also encompass emotional engagement, the community's involvement, and how our students perceive their own potential. Transformational change often transcends what can be easily quantified. The board remained engaged, considering her rebuttal, but she needed to drive the point home. Too often we place our faith solely in numbers, forgetting the stories behind them. Every child deserves opportunities to believe in their future and agency over their learning. With that statement, she watched the reaction ripple through the room. A few members nodded thoughtfully. Could it be that they were finally beginning to understand? As Sarah leaned into the energy of her words, she recalled the courage it had taken to step out of her comfort zone, reflecting on each small effort that had brought her here. Every late night spent preparing, each moment of doubt confronted, and every story shared at her workshop now coalesced into an indelible truth. She was capable, and the possibilities she envisioned were attainable if the board would dare to step forward with her. A board member queried, "What support would this require from us? What resources do we realistically need to make this a success?" This question empowered her. She had envisioned the pathways to turn concepts into actions. "I believe we can start with a pilot program that utilizes existing structures and volunteers from our community. We can test different engagement strategies and collect data to evaluate their impact. With your commitment, we can prove that this initiative is not just viable. It can become a model for other districts." Another board member interjected, "But without concrete data to show improvement, how can we justify this funding?" She pivoted in her response, drawing on the connections she had forged over her time in the diner and her newfound community role. When we invest in relationships, we cultivate trust not just among students but within families and the community. The data will follow as students feel invested in their education, motivated by mentorship and the belief that they matter. As the discussions pressed on, she could feel the board's skepticism gradually shifting into curiosity. The intricacies of her proposal seemed to foster dialogue, a discussion of real needs not just from an administration standpoint, but rooted in the heart of the community itself. Finally, she recalled Mr. Thompson's words, "You should teach Sarah. You've got a gift." Sometimes, she emphasized, the greatest metrics don't come from written tests. They arise from an inspired heart. Our students are our future, and how we empower them today will resonate for generations. Let us not wait for the perfect moment. Let us create it. With those words, the atmosphere shifted once more as nods appeared around the room. The hard facade of skepticism began to soften under the beacon of optimism she had ignited. As the board members finally leaned into deliberation with one another, a sense of exhilaration surged through Sarah. She was no longer just a waitress fighting for validation. She had become an advocate, a voice echoing the hopes of families and students alike. When they returned to her, the president spoke again, this time with a warmth that hadn't been there at the start. "We'd like to move forward with the pilot program on a trial basis, provided you can outline specific data points we can track." A rush of joy overwhelmed her, and a wave of laughter bubbled up at the realization that her vision was beginning to take flight. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the delight flooding her heart. "I will ensure we align our goals with the benchmarks you've set." As the meeting concluded, Sarah exited the boardroom beaming, filled with a rush of accomplishment and renewed determination. Each step felt lighter. She had fought not only for her dreams but also for the dreams of children who deserved every opportunity to shine. In the following weeks, she meticulously prepared for the program launch and rallied her community. Parents and children alike were invited to participate, and what had once felt like a distant fantasy started to become a reality as families began to engage more directly in their students' education. Through each proactive step, she reclaimed the part of herself that had been hidden beneath layers of doubt. The courage she displayed in confronting rejection transformed into relentless accountability for the life she wanted both for herself and for Lily. As the walls of her small town opened up to new possibilities, she realized her journey was just beginning. She felt a surge of gratitude toward Mr. Thompson for sparking her desire to teach, towards her colleagues for their unwavering belief in her vision, and most importantly, towards herself for having the audacity to persist amid adversity. In that unwavering conviction, Sarah stood transformed, fully embodying her mission and recognizing her own voice. She was not just a waitress looking for validation. She was a woman leading change, proving to herself that the fight for one's dreams is always worth the struggle. And in that resolute moment, she embraced the heart of her journey, knowing she was finally on track towards fulfillment. Now is the time for you to join Sarah on her transformative journey today. You need to subscribe now to the channel for more exclusive emotional stories that inspire and uplift. Leave a like now to support the algorithm. Your engagement is vital to help others find these powerful narratives. Comment below your thoughts and theories on Sarah's journey. What can we learn from her experiences? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. Let's spread the message of courage and resilience far and wide. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.